The crash in the desert. The desert night was quiet. Only the soft wind moving across the endless sand. Jack Carter sat outside his small workshop, sipping from a metal mug, his eyes on the stars. He liked the peace, the silence, the feeling that the world had forgotten him. But then, the sky tore open. A burning streak of light cut across the heavens, growing bigger and brighter. Jack stood up, his mug falling to the ground. The object roared like thunder as it entered the atmosphere. Trailing fire, it slammed into the desert floor with a deafening crash. Shaking the ground under Jack's feet, a pillar of smoke rose into the night. Glowing with strange sparks of blue and silver, Jack grabbed his tool bag without thinking. Years of fixing machines had taught him one thing: trouble never waited. He jumped into his old desert rover and sped toward the crash site, its engine growling in the dark. The closer he got, the hotter the air felt, carrying the metallic taste of burnt metal. In the distance, he saw the wreck. The alien ship was unlike anything he had seen before. Its surface shimmered with changing colors, as if it was alive. Half of it was buried in the sand, the other half split open like a crushed can. Flames licked the edges while strange fluids hissed and steamed. Jack stepped closer, covering his mouth from the smoke. Inside the wreckage, he saw movement. A figure lay trapped under twisted metal, small, delicate, but not human. Her skin had a faint golden glow, and her hair flowed like silver threads in the dim light. Her clothes were torn, revealing a strange device on her chest, cracked and sparking, and her blood. It was silver, glimmering as it dripped onto the sand. Jack's instincts kicked in. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but she was alive and in trouble. He pulled out his cutting torch and started slicing through the metal. Each spark felt louder than the crash itself, echoing in the silent desert. Then, a sound made him freeze. Footsteps, heavy and fast, crunching the sand behind him. He turned his head slightly and saw shadows moving in the smoke. Voices speaking in a harsh, alien language. Shapes emerged, tall figures in black armor, carrying strange rifles that glowed at the tips. Jack's heart pounded. Whoever they were, they weren't here to help. One of them pointed at the alien girl and shouted something. The others raised their weapons, aiming straight at her. Jack didn't wait. He cut through the last piece of metal trapping her leg. She groaned faintly, her eyes opening for a moment. Bright, golden, full of fear. Jack lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was. The bounty hunters, if that's what they were, shouted again. Stepping closer, Jack spotted a broken panel on the ship and an idea hit him. He reached into the wreck and yanked at some cables. The ship's auxiliary engine sputtered and roared to life, releasing a massive burst of smoke and steam. The desert filled with a thick cloud, hiding everything. Jack ran, the girl in his arms, his boots sinking into the sand. He headed toward a rocky ridge where he knew there was an old smuggler tunnel. Blaster fire cut through the smoke, sizzling past his head. He didn't stop, his lungs burning as he climbed the ridge. Behind him, the armored figures coughed and cursed in their strange tongue. Jack reached a narrow crack in the rocks and slipped inside. The tunnel was dark, cool, and silent. Only when he was deep inside did he stop to catch his breath. The alien girl was still alive, but weak, her breathing uneven. Her golden eyes opened again, looking at him with confusion and fear. Jack whispered, "You're safe for now," but deep inside, he knew the night was only beginning. The rescue under fire. The tunnel walls shook with the sound of distant gunfire. Jack adjusted his grip on the alien girl, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. He moved deeper, the rough stone scraping his arms. The smell of smoke and burned metal still clung to him. Somewhere above, the bounty hunters were spreading out. Their voices echoed faintly through the rocks, a mix of growls and clipped commands. Jack knew these tunnels well, but they also had dangers of their own. Old support beams could collapse without warning. Some parts were so narrow that even he had to squeeze sideways. He reached a fork in the passage. To the left, a longer route toward his workshop. To the right, a shorter way, but it passed through the cave of echoes. He hated that. Place the walls amplified every sound, making it impossible to tell where enemies were. But with armed hunters behind him, the short path was the only choice. Jack crouched low and hurried through the echoing chamber. Every step was loud, bouncing back at him like a dozen footsteps. The girl stirred weakly, mumbling something in her strange language. Jack whispered, "Stay with me." Her golden eyes blinked at him, then closed again. A sudden metallic click stopped him cold from the shadows ahead. A red targeting light appeared, then another. 2 bounty hunters were already in the cave. They must have split up to cut him off. Jack's mind raced. He had no blaster, only his tool bag. He slowly lowered the girl onto a flat rock, shielding her with his body. One hunter shouted in their alien tongue, waving for him to step aside. Jack reached into his bag and grabbed a small plasma cutter. It wasn't a weapon, but it could melt through steel or armor. The hunters moved closer. Jack pretended to comply, raising his hands. Then in one sudden motion, he flicked on the cutter and slashed at the nearest one's weapon. The alien roared as the rifle's barrel melted, glowing orange. The second hunter fired, the energy blast scorching the wall beside Jack's head. Jack grabbed a handful of loose rocks from the floor and threw them into the darkness. The sound bounced wildly in the echo chamber. The hunters spun around, confused by the noise. Jack seized the moment, scooping up the girl and rushing past them. The tunnel narrowed, forcing him to run hunched over. The hunters shouted behind him. Their heavy boots pounded the stone. Jack's heart raced, but ahead he saw a faint light. The hidden exit near his workshop. If he could reach it, he'd have the advantage. Blaster fire lit the tunnel like lightning. One shot grazed Jack's shoulder, burning through his jacket. Pain flared, but he didn't stop. He burst out of the tunnel into the cool night air. The desert wind felt like freedom in the distance. His workshop sat half hidden under a dune. Jack ran for it, his legs burning, behind him. The hunters emerged from the tunnel, their glowing rifles locking onto his back. Jack dove behind a pile of scrap metal, just as energy bolts tore into the sand around him. With the girl still in his arms, Jack crawled toward the workshop's reinforced door. He punched in the access code, the heavy metal slab sliding open with a hiss. Inside, the smell of oil, metal, and old machines wrapped around him like an old friend. He slammed the door shut just as the hunters reached the outer fence. The workshop was safe, for now, but he knew they wouldn't give up that easily. Jack laid the alien girl on his repair table. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale. Up close, he could see more of the damage. The device on her chest was cracked almost in half. Strange lights flickered weakly inside it. He didn't know exactly what it was, but something told him it was the only thing keeping her alive, and now it was his problem to fix. The hidden workshop. The workshop was dim, lit only by a single overhead lamp swaying gently. The walls were lined with shelves stacked high with gears, wires, and old tools. In the corner, the soft hum of a power generator filled the air. Jack placed the alien girl on his main repair table, a heavy slab of reinforced steel. Her silver blood shimmered under the light, forming small pools around the edges of the table. Jack pulled a small scanner from the shelf. It wasn't made for alien biology, but it was the best he had. The screen flickered, showing readings he didn't understand, strange heart patterns, unknown energy spikes. One thing was clear. Her life support module was badly damaged. Half of its casing was cracked, the inner coil sparking weakly every time it flickered. Her breathing stuttered. He opened his old metal chest, digging through drawers for anything that could work. Loose capacitors, custom coils, even a salvaged alien circuit board from years ago. Jack knew this was risky. Mixing human and alien tech could cause overloads, explosions, or worse. But without it, she would die. Her fingers twitched, brushing against his hand. Her golden eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. She tried to speak, but her voice was too weak. Jack leaned closer. She whispered something in her language and tapped her chest device, then pointed at a glowing crystal embedded in its center. Jack understood. The crystal was the power source, and it was cracked. He thought for a moment, then remembered a shard of similar material stored in his lockbox. It was from an old wreck he had once scavenged. He dug it out, the faint blue glow matching the one in her device. It might work, but replacing it meant shutting the module down completely. If he failed, she wouldn't survive the next minute. Jack pulled on his gloves. He carefully disconnected the device, the hum of its energy fading instantly. The girl gasped, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Jack's hands moved fast, guided by years of mechanical instinct. Wires twisted, sparks popped, the smell of burnt metal filled the air. He slid the new crystal into place, its glow spilling across the table. Before he could finish, a loud clang echoed from outside. Jack froze, his eyes darting to the security monitor. 3 figures were moving through the outer yard, their black armor gleaming under the moonlight. The bounty hunters had found him, and they weren't alone this time. 2 more heat signatures appeared on the scanner, reinforcements. Jack's jaw tightened. He wasn't done fixing the device, but time was running out. He grabbed his welding torch and worked faster, his hands a blur. The alien girl's breath was slowing, her golden eyes closing again. The door sensors beeped. They were trying to cut through the workshop's main entrance. Sweat rolled down Jack's forehead. One wrong move and the crystal would shatter. He twisted the last connector into place and slammed the casing shut. The module lit up, brighter than before. The girl's breathing steadied, her chest rising smoothly. Jack didn't have time to relax. The reinforced door groaned under the bounty hunter's assault. He looked at the girl and muttered, "Hang on, we're not done yet." His hand reached for the lever that would activate the workshop's hidden defenses. If they wanted her, they'd have to fight for it. Asterisk the awakening. The workshop door rattled. With each heavy impact, dust fell from the ceiling, and the old metal hinges groaned. Jack's heart was pounding, but he kept his eyes on the alien girl. Her breathing was steady now, the glow of the repaired crystal pulsing softly in her chest device. Then, her fingers twitched again, her golden eyes opened, this time sharper, more aware. For a moment, she stared at the unfamiliar walls, the shelves of tools, the faint hum of machines. Her gaze fell on Jack, and she sat up too quickly. Wincing in pain, Jack raised his hands slowly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay, you're safe here," he said softly. She tilted her head, clearly not understanding his words, but there was something in her eyes, suspicion mixed with gratitude. She touched the device on her chest, feeling the smooth new crystal. Then she looked back at him, almost as if asking, "You fixed this?" Jack nodded. She studied him for a moment longer, then spoke a few slow words in her language. The sound was melodic, almost like a song. Jack shook his head. "Sorry, I don't speak." "Whatever that is." She frowned, searching for a way to communicate. The pounding at the door grew louder. Jack glanced at the security screen. The bounty hunters were setting up something large and dangerous. "Some kind of breaching cannon," he muttered. "We don't have time for this," and began clearing a workbench to set up defenses. The alien girl's eyes followed him. She suddenly reached for the small pouch at her waist. Pulling out a thin silver band, she placed it on her neck, and with a faint spark, her voice changed. The next words came out in broken but understandable English. "You save me, why?" Jack froze for a second. He didn't have a good answer. It was just instinct. "I fix things," he said, "and you needed fixing." She blinked, then gave a faint, tired smile. Her hand moved to her ribs where deep burns marked her skin. "You good mechanic," she whispered, before her eyes hardened again. "They come to kill." Jack didn't need the warning. The workshop shook as the breaching cannon fired, the reinforced door buckling under the force. The girl reached into the pouch again and pulled out a small, cube-shaped device. She pressed a hidden button. and the cube unfolded into a miniature control panel. Strange symbols glowed on its surface. She tapped a sequence, and a holographic image of the bounty hunters appeared, red outlines highlighting weak points in their armor. Jack whistled softly, impressed. "You can fight?" he asked. She nodded, her expression firm. "I fight," she said, "but need you to make weapon work." She handed him the cube, and Jack saw that parts of it were cracked, just like her life support module had been. The pounding on the door stopped for a moment. Then there was silence. Jack knew that kind of silence. The kind right before all hell broke loose. He set the cube on the bench and grabbed his tools again. "We've got maybe 2 minutes," he muttered. "Let's make it count." The girl moved to the side of the table, watching every move he made. Her hands trembled, but her eyes stayed fixed on the door. Jack soldered, rewired, and reinforced the cube's core until it hummed with energy. He handed it back to her, and she slipped it onto her wrist like a gauntlet. The glow from it spread up her arm, tracing strange patterns across her skin. Jack stepped back. "Whatever that thing does, I hope it's enough," he said. The girl looked at him, her voice steady now. "It is," she promised. The door finally gave way with a deafening crash, and the bounty hunters stormed in, weapons ready. The chase tightened. The reinforced door hit the floor with a thunderous clang. Dust and sparks flew into the workshop. 5 bounty hunters stepped through the opening, their black armor reflecting the workshop lights. They moved like predators, weapons raised, scanning every shadow. Jack didn't wait for them to aim. He hit the hidden floor switch with his boot. A section of the workshop's ground dropped away, revealing a trench lined with scrap spikes. One bounty hunter fell straight in, his armor screeching as the jagged metal tore into it. The others spread out instantly, firing blasts that scorched the air around Jack. The alien girl raised her wrist device. Blue energy shot out in an arc, striking one of the hunters. His armor lit up with glowing cracks before shattering into pieces. He collapsed, unconscious. She swayed slightly, the attack draining her strength. But she didn't stop. Jack ducked behind an engine block, pulling a small EMP grenade from his tool bag. It was crude, made from a repurposed capacitor and 2 scavenged coils. But it worked. He lobbed it toward the nearest pair of hunters. It detonated with a loud pop, and their rifles went dead. The hunters tossed their useless weapons aside and drew long curved blades that shimmered unnaturally. The girl shouted something in her own language, her tone sharp. Jack didn't know the words, but he understood the meaning. "Move." They both dove behind a workbench as the hunters charged. The bench took the hit, splintering under the force of their strikes. Jack grabbed a heavy wrench from the floor and swung it into one hunter's helmet. The metal rang like a bell, and the aliens staggered back, but they were running out of room. The workshop wasn't built for prolonged fights. Every step they took was boxed in by piles of tools, half-built engines, and dangling chains. Jack knew that if they stayed here, the hunters would corner them. He pointed toward the back of the workshop, where a hidden hatch was bolted into the floor. "Down there," he shouted. The girl nodded, covering him with short bursts from her wrist device. Jack sprinted to the hatch, yanked it open, and revealed a narrow metal chute leading down into darkness. Blaster fire ricocheted off the walls as they made their move. Jack slid down first, the cold metal scraping his arms. The girl followed, pulling the hatch shut above them. They landed hard in a maintenance tunnel under the workshop. The sound of armored boots above told them the bounty hunters were already searching for another way in. Jack pulled a flashlight from his belt, its beam slicing through the dark. The tunnel stretched far ahead, lined with old pipes and tangled cables. "This leads to the East Dunes," he said. "We can lose them there." The girl's breathing was still uneven, but her eyes burned with determination. "They never stop," she said, her voice low but certain. Jack glanced back at the hatch. He could hear faint thuds, the hunters trying to break through to the tunnel. He tightened his grip on the flashlight and started moving, Every step echoed, each sound feeling too loud. The chase wasn't over. It was only getting tighter. The last stand. The maintenance tunnel ended at a rusted ladder leading up to a weathered hatch. Jack pushed it open slowly, the hinges whining in protest. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of sand and engine oil. They emerged into the east dunes, the pale moon painting the desert in silver light. Far in the distance, dark shapes moved across the sand. The bounty hunters. They had split into two groups, circling around to cut them off. Jack's jaw tightened. There would be no more running. If they wanted to survive, they had to stand their ground here. The alien girl scanned the area, her golden eyes narrowing. She pointed toward a cluster of jagged rocks rising from the sand like broken teeth. Jack understood immediately. High ground and cover. They scrambled toward it, their boots kicking up trails of dust. By the time they reached the rocks, the hunters were closing in, their armor glinting under the moon. Jack dropped his tool bag onto the ground and pulled out everything that could be turned into a weapon: a coil of wire, a fuel cell, a small welding torch, even a box of nails. The girl crouched beside him, her wrist device glowing faintly. "I have one strong attack left," she said, her voice strained. Jack glanced at her. "Then we make it count." The first two hunters crept between the rocks, their rifles sweeping side to side. Jack triggered a tripwire he had set seconds earlier. A fuel cell rolled down the slope, bouncing against the stone before bursting into a cloud of fire. The hunters stumbled back, their armor scorched. The girl seized the opening, raising her wrist and firing a searing beam of blue light. It cut through one hunter's chest plate, dropping him instantly. More shadows moved at the edge of the rocks. Jack grabbed the welding torch, cranking it to maximum heat. When a hunter lunged at him with a blade, Jack sidestepped and slammed the torch into the alien's armor seam. The metal hissed, glowing red before splitting apart. The hunter roared in pain and collapsed into the sand. But there were still three left. They advanced slowly, realizing brute force wasn't working. One raised a weapon unlike the others, a compact launcher that hummed with dangerous energy. Jack's instinct screamed. He dove forward, tackling the hunter just as the weapon discharged. The blast hit the rocks behind them, sending shards of stone flying into the air. The girl knelt on the sand, her hand clutching the glowing crystal on her chest. The patterns on her skin flared brighter, pulsing with energy. She whispered something in her language, then aimed her wrist device at the last two hunters. The blast that followed was different, deeper, sharper, almost alive. It tore through the air like a lightning strike, engulfing the hunters in a blinding wave of light. When the glare faded, the dunes were silent. The hunters lay still, their armor cracked and smoking. Jack stood slowly, his breath heavy. He looked at the girl. She was swaying, her strength spent, but in her eyes was a fierce, unbroken fire. Jack knelt beside her, offering his hand. "You're safe," he said, though they both knew safety was only temporary. She placed her hand in his, gripping it tightly, above them. The night sky was vast and endless, but Jack had the strange feeling that their fight was far from over. Escape into the stars. The desert was quiet again. The only sound was the faint crackle of cooling armor on the fallen bounty hunters. Jack stood at the edge of the rocks, scanning the horizon. No more movement, no more shadows, but deep down, he knew this was only a pause, not an ending. The alien girl sat in the sand, her wrist device powered down. The glow of the crystal on her chest was steady now, its light reflecting in her golden eyes. She looked at Jack for a long moment before speaking. "My name is Sira," she said slowly, as if tasting the sound of the words in his language. Jack nodded. "Jack Carter." Sira's gaze drifted to the sky. Through the shifting clouds, a faint blinking light appeared. Growing brighter, Jack recognized the pattern, a ship signal. Only this one was unlike any human craft he had ever seen. Its silhouette was sleek and curved, almost alive in shape. "They find me soon," Sierra said, her tone somewhere between relief and worry. Jack glanced at the wreck of her old ship, half buried in the sand miles away. You mean your people? He asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. My guard. My oath kin. Loyal ones still. The light in the sky grew into a descending ship. Wind whipped across the dunes as the craft landed, its hull shimmering with faint patterns like flowing water. The ramp lowered, and two figures emerged, armored, but in colors far different from the black-clad hunters. Their weapons were sheathed, and their hands open. One of them bowed deeply to Sierra. Speaking in her language, she replied with a short command, her voice calm but firm. Sierra turned back to Jack. You saved me, she said. Not just life, but mission. Jack raised an eyebrow. Mission? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. War is coming. Your world will be part of it. I will need you. Jack almost laughed. I'm just a mechanic, he said. Sierra's eyes narrowed, her voice steady. No. You are the only one who could fix what others would throw away. She extended her hand toward him. Jack glanced back at his workshop, the place he had hidden from the world for years. The quiet life was safe, predictable. But as he looked at the endless stars above, he felt that old pull, the call of something greater. He took her hand. Together, they walked toward the waiting ship. The ramp lifted, sealing them inside. Engines roared, and the desert began to shrink below them. Through the cockpit window, the stars spread out in an ocean of light. Jack smiled faintly. Guess I'm not just fixing engines anymore, he muttered, and the ship leapt into the void, leaving Earth far behind.